All right, we're going to go ahead and get started because I know that people probably have other appointments on their calendars, and I didn't want to hold you all back. Just by way of introduction, my name is Janya Stout. I am the president of Prime Capital's Retirement and Wellness division, and I've been in the retirement industry for about 30 years. It's what I live and breathe, and my most favorite topic is talking about wellness overall, financial wellness for sure. And today we're going to cover how to raise your happiness level. And some of you may be wondering, what does a financial advisor know about raising your happiness level? I will tell you that I started doing this session when COVID hit, and I saw the increased need that people had just to feel happy. And I did a bunch of research and read some books from Arthur Brooks, who I'll be talking about quite a bit in the next over the next 30 minutes. So it certainly is a passion of mine. And overall, our goal at Prime Capital is to help you de-stress your life. Most of the time we're talking about money and financial decisions, but that can be applied in other ways as well. So if I can help raise people's happiness level, that's a good thing overall. So with that, I want to kick it off and have us do a little bit of an audience interaction. And you can either chat this in the chat bar, you can write it down on a piece of paper, or you can just think about it in your head. And right now, I want you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you on the happiness level? So think about 10 being ecstatic, you're super happy, we're about to hit the holidays, which I guess could be good, could be bad for some, but where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And if we have any brave souls, you're welcome to also chat why you're feeling that level of happiness. So from 1 to 10, I'll just pause, let you think about it, and then we'll move on to the next exercise. All right. So think about, hopefully you wrote it down or took a mental note of where you felt. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is, most people have their phones with them. If you don't have your phone, that's fine. Send a text message to somebody that you want, whether hopefully you know them, but it could be a family, a friend, a coworker, and send them some kind of nice note. Like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I hope you have a great holiday next week. Or, I just wanted you to know you did a great job yesterday at that event. Whatever it is, but think about somebody that you can send some level of gratitude towards. And I'll wait for you to do that. So if you have your phone, pick it up and send the text. If you don't, maybe write it down and do it afterwards. If you're on a desktop and you want to send an email to somebody, but just take a few minutes or seconds and send a nice note to somebody. Okay? All right. Now that you've done that, think about where you sit now on a level of 1 to 10. So, and we're going to get into the meat of this quite a bit, but a lot of times when you do nice things for other people, the studies have shown that actually helps raise your own happiness level. And I'm just curious if anybody recognized just a slight difference in how they felt after they sent that text message or email. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? I know that whenever I do something nice for somebody else, I do feel a little bit extra vibration, some type of happiness. And I think what that means is that happiness is not necessarily static. It is fluid and it can shift. So hopefully that exercise helped you recognize that just so slightly, and we'll get into the meat of this more here in a few minutes. So before we dive in, I want to give credit where credit is due. And a lot of what we're exploring today comes from the work of Arthur C. Brooks. You may have heard of him. He's a Harvard professor, a social scientist, and self proclaimed happiness nerd. He's taken the science of human flourishing and turned it into tools that are practical and powerful. He works and blends research, spirituality, psychology, and public policy into one simple idea. You can build a happier life at any age. So, with that, I want to kind of go into more of the details around some of his work. So, first of all, what is happiness? One thing that is very clear, Arthur Brooks teaches a class at Harvard, and they've done a long-standing study around happiness. And one thing that they have recognized is that it's not a destination, it's a direction. So it is, as I mentioned before, it's very fluid. 50% of your happiness is genetics, 25% is your circumstances, and 25% is your intentional activities. And I'm going to kind of dive into that as we move forward. But what this tells us is that 50% is genetic, and we can kind of put that to the side, right? There's not a whole lot we can do with our genetics. We're born with it. We can't change it from that perspective. 25% is circumstantial. And if you think about your life, we've had different periods of our lives that have had more stressful circumstances than others. So that is a very fluid situation, is your circumstances. And then 25% is intentional. So that's something that you have complete control of. So if you look at happiness, 50%, it's pretty hard. We can't do anything about it. But there is 50% that we can make an impact. And for sure, 25% of that we can have control over. But why be happy? I know that sounds pretty obvious. Like, of course, people want to be happy. But there are some research and some science-backed reasons why happiness isn't just a feeling, it's an advantage for your health, your relationships, and your success. So let's talk about the health of it. The studies show that happier people live 7 to 10 years longer than unhappy people. I always say I am very blessed that I was born with the happiness gene. I always say that, my bad days are probably most people's, good days. So I hope that means that I'm going to live 7 to 10 years longer on average. But also, happier people are 22% less likely to develop heart disease. And I'm not going to go into all the details about the why, but it's been studied and it is backed by science. But a lot of that has to do with cortisol levels. So if you're happier, you don't tend to dwell on stressful situations, or the stress doesn't impact you as much. So it doesn't raise your cortisol level as much. There is a correlation between happiness and lower heart disease. Also, happiness fuels success. They've shown in a bunch of these different studies, you can see referenced at the bottom of the page, happier people or positive people earn 10 to 30% more income than the average. And if you think about that, think about some of the people that you work with or that you've met, whether it's in the neighborhood or wherever it might be. Happy people generally have a positive outlook, and you like being around them. So many times, if you look at some of the studies, the happier people tend to get the promotion over the grumpy, unhappy person, right? Happiness also boosts workplace productivity by 12%. So if you're in HR watching this, definitely, I'm so happy, no pun intended, that you shared this invite to this webinar, because if we can help your workforce become happier, we can also um, impact the productivity. And then lastly, happier people report having more creativity and more innovation and problem solving ability. So creativity does have a direct correlation as well to innovation and growth. And that could be personally or from a business perspective. So lots of really good reasons to embrace the happiness and choose happiness. It's pretty clear that it helps you with your health, your success, and your longevity. So absolutely choose happiness. And some of you might be sitting there and saying, well, that sounds great. I want to choose happiness, but how? How do I choose happiness? It's not like you just wake up one morning and say, okay, I'm going to be happy. Now, that is part of it. I will say that, and we'll get to it. But there are some steps that I want to cover that will help you actually raise your happiness level. So, again, I already mentioned Arthur Brooks. He is, kind of the happiness nerd that everybody knows of. If you Google him, he's written 3 or 4 books. He wrote a book with Oprah Winfrey on Build the Life You Want. He writes a column in The Atlantic. He also has a podcast. So if you're into any of those things, definitely check him out. So as I mentioned, sorry about that. Happiness is a skill. And it looks like the PowerPoint didn't show up very well there, but we'll make sure that in the file that we send you that it has the right information on there. But happiness is a skill. So it's just like going to the gym. You go to the gym to increase your muscle strength. You're also going to do things, and the things that we're going to cover today will also help you kind of train your brain to make yourself and have a better mindset from a happiness perspective. So the happiness formula is 5 things. And number 1 is gratitude. And I'm going to go into that. And that's focusing on what's good in your life right now. And number 2 is relationships and deepening those relationships, not just having kind of on the surface relationships. It's really about having deep, meaningful relationships. We also have purpose. So doing what matters to you is really important with raising your happiness level. And then emotional mastery. And that's really about how you handle stress when bad things happen. Because listen, we know bad things happen. And mastering kind of how to handle that will help you overall from a happiness perspective. And then lastly, daily practice. I think that that's something super important. So let's hit the first one, gratitude. If you're listening, you might have heard about this already. People talk about gratitude journals, but there really is science behind it. And neuroscientists have found that regular gratitude practice increases the activity in our prefrontal cortex and strengthens neural pathways associated with well-being. Over time, this literally changes your brain's default setting from scanning for the problems and moving it to really embracing the blessings of it. So how do you practice gratitude? There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can do it in the morning. You can write 3 specific things that you're grateful for. And one thing that Professor Brooks talks about is being specific and not broad. So don't say, as far as gratitude, kind of instead of saying, oh, I'm grateful for my family, maybe something more like, I'm grateful for the fact, my daughter laughed at breakfast and she barely talks to me. So she actually looked at me and smiled. Those are things like specific and items that you can write down. Now, there are a lot of studies that talk about writing things down makes a bigger impact. And not just when I'm talking about happiness, this is also about goals. There's a book called The Millionaire Next Door, and they interviewed a bunch of millionaires, and they found one common denominator of all these millionaires were that they wrote down their goals and they had a written plan. Well, that applies to gratitude as well. You could also do gratitude walks. Let's say you're not a writer. I'll be honest and transparent here. I don't like my handwriting, so I don't really journal the way they tell you to do it, but I certainly am very mindful of gratitude. And what I mean by that and how I do it, when I walk my dogs in the morning, I actually, like, while I'm walking, I will try to take notice of the trees, especially like when spring's happening or fall and the beautiful fall leaves are changing colors. I try to say in my brain, look at that beautiful, color of that leaf. I'm so grateful that I'm alive and walking in this world and able to, look at those beautiful colors that I see in front of me. So doing that for, 10 minutes when you're doing your walk with your dog, or, whatever it might be, walk with a neighbor, maybe you both decide like, hey, we're not going to talk for 10 minutes. Let's just go through a grateful moment and let's reflect on what we see in front of us or what we've experienced in the last 24 hours. And then another practice is to write thank you notes. So very similar to that exercise we just did where you sent a text to somebody, writing a genuine thank you note. I can tell you that in my years of being a retirement advisor, and I've done a lot of public speaking and webinars like this, and I will sometimes get emails or LinkedIn messages or handwritten cards from somebody I didn't even know that tells me that they are grateful that they watched something that I had done. And that makes such a big impact on has made a big impact on my life. But when you can do it back to somebody else, I think that's huge. And it's more than just birthday cards or anniversary cards. I mean, doing something for something that you're genuinely thankful of them will also help raise your own happiness level. So I'll reference my two daughters quite a bit in any time I do presentations, or my parents, my poor family. They're my guinea pigs that I talk about all the time. But I think that writing thank you notes and doing it outside of birthdays is more impactful and can really make a positive impact. So some common obstacles of gratitude. I think that it would really be interesting if we had a poll here, and I could see the folks that are watching this to see, did you attend this because you don't feel that you have much happiness and you're trying to raise that happiness level, or are you already a happy person and you thought, well, hey, this might be good just to kind of raise it up a little more. But some of the common obstacles are that people think or resist gratitude because maybe it dismisses something that, real problems that are going on. I mean, we've seen lots of things in the news. I mean, every year there's some big catastrophe or event that is, not something to be happy about. So it's sometimes hard to feel grateful when things might be falling apart everywhere else. But it also means that if you do this, you're choosing to also see the good alongside the difficult. And then lastly, the transformation, it's about 4 to 6 weeks of gratitude practice is when you start to see that noticeable change in the baseline mood. So you can see the 3-to-1 ratio I list at the bottom, which says research shows that it takes 3 positive thoughts to counterbalance a negative thought. They also, I don't know if you all have ever heard of, they say that it takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. So there's a reason why we're wired in certain ways. And I think that absolutely, I'm a true believer that you can raise your happiness level if you want to. The second ingredient to raise your happiness level is relationships. And this is deepening your love and connection. Quality relationships can have an 80% impact on your happiness. So So, and that was done, that's been researched on Harvard's longest running study on happiness. I already spoke about that you can live 7.5 years longer on average with social connections, i.e., as well as which basically raises your happiness, and then 50% less stress when you have relationships. So there are four types of relationships or connections. There's the intimate bond, which they say that you should have at least, 1 to 3 people who they're your closest relationship. They're probably your partner, your best friend, a family member, but really kind of that should be the right number. And I think that I also do a presentation on how to emotionally prepare for retirement. And then we do retirement series. And I think that as we age and, you know, people, if you think about in nursing homes, people that might don't have any family members that are visiting them, they really, if they just kind of stay in the room all day long and don't interact, they don't have any connection, which has absolutely impacted. If you look at a lot of studies, that does impact your longevity. So intimate bonds, 1 to 3 people. Close friends, this would be between 5 and 15 people that you trust and enjoy and that you want to be around. At least maybe aim for a monthly connection. I know that when COVID hit, we all got used to kind of staying at home more and maybe kind of got out of the habit of going out and about as much. And I do myself fall into being guilty of sometimes just wanting to sit on the couch and not go out with friends or what have you. But I do recognize that once I do that, I do feel better. The next morning I wake up, I'm much happier, but that's all about connection. And then the third level of connection is community. And this is going to be your broader network. It's a network of people that you see regularly, but not intensive contact. So maybe you have a child in elementary school, and you're a room mom or a room dad, or you volunteer for the PTA and you know some of the parents there and you see them maybe once a month at a meeting. They are part of your community, but they're not somebody that you're going to tell, a deep, dark secret to. And then acquaintances. These are people that you might actually even forget their name, but you kind of know them. You go in the grocery store and someone's like, "Hey, how are you?" And you're like, "Oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but I know her. And it's been a while, but we are acquaintances." So that will give you the 4 different levels of connection. Now, there are ways that you can work on making an investment into these types of connections. You can have a weekly check in, schedule 1 hour per week with someone you love, and do that with no phones or distractions. There's also a practice of practicing vulnerability. Share something real about your life, a fear, a dream, a struggle. So authentic connection requires authentic sharing. So to truly connect with someone, sometimes we do have to be a little bit more vulnerable. Acts of service, do something thoughtful for someone without being asked. Reconciliation, I'm sure you've heard that holding grudges is absolutely detrimental to your mental health and happiness, for sure. It's Arthur Brooks says it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So practice forgiveness, not for them necessarily, but for your own peace, because you harbor that and you carry it around with you. And then celebration. When something good happens, I love helping other people celebrate their big wins, right? I know when clients of ours win an award, I can't wait to go online and, order some kind of like cookies or something to help them celebrate. When you do those things, that will also help you build stronger relationships. But again, it helps with your happiness level. Ingredient number 3 is purpose. Do work that matters for you. And this one's an interesting one, and I've really thought a lot about this one over the years. I know and I recognize that I'm in an industry where I can help people. Prime Capital, we're financial advisors. If you ask most financial advisors why they do what they do, they say they want to help people. So we're in an industry that can help people. Sometimes your job might be the type that it's hard to find purpose in it, right? So don't feel bad about that. Sometimes, purpose can be you like the community at work that you work with. And you can also find purpose outside of work. It doesn't have to be in your job. It can be, on the weekends, it can be volunteering, contributing, and, doing things for others that you feel passionate about. So, how do you integrate purpose daily? You could write a one sentence personal mission statement. Like, I help people discover their potential through passionate teaching. You could align it with your work. Again, not everybody is fortunate enough to have a job that's completely aligned. I think we'd all want to work in something that we care about and are passionate about. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just not available and it's not something that we can do. Volunteerism is really impactful to purpose. You can do that on your own, on the weekends, in the evenings. And mentorship. Maybe you do find it through work, but maybe there's a younger employee that just joined and you mentor that individual through the work. And that really does fulfill a lot of people's purpose to helping others. So a daily question that you can ask yourself is, how will I serve others today? Or each evening you can say, how did I make a difference today? I'll share an exercise that I did with my girls, my two daughters. This was back when one was in middle school, one was a freshman in high school. And this was when I got really into my happiness kick. And so we had this exercise, and I was a single mom. And I said, okay, girls, Hannah, Sophie, when you go to school today, I want you to make somebody smile that, that wouldn't have normally smiled when they saw you, right? And then at dinner, we would share what we did. I had to play the game, not the game, but I had to do the exercise as well. And it was so awesome to watch my kids come back to the dinner table and be like, hey, Mom, I want to tell you about something. And I'll never forget my one daughter, my youngest. One of her stories was, Mom, there was this boy that's in my class, and I notice he always sits alone at the lunch table. So today I sat next to him, sat across from him, and sat with him. And what was so neat was all my friends came over and sat with him too. And I said, how did that make you feel? She said, it made me feel great. But again, teaching, your children or your circle of friends how to also do good things will also help raise your own happiness level, because that definitely helped me as well. And then ingredient number 4 is emotional mastery. This is just kind of, how do you handle things that are happening emotionally that kind of reframe and help build your emotional resilience. I'll just highlight the 10-10-10 rule, which I love this one. Will this matter in 10 minutes, 10 months, or 10 years? So when something bad happens, and being a mom, I can tell you there's been lots of episodes along the way when my kids have thought the world was ending because of, not making the one grade that they needed or they wanted to get, or being on a specific team they wanted to make. And I always would say, you know what, will this matter in 10 minutes? Maybe. 10 months? Probably not. And for sure, you're not even going to remember this in 10 years. So just kind of notice what is going on when something's stressing you out. You can see here on the 4 steps of emotional mastery. Label it. So kind of recognize, like, sometimes when I feel anxious, I'm like, okay, why am I feeling anxious? Let me think about this. I dissect it. I go, oh, I'm anxious because I need to do something that needs to be done by Friday. I'm going to accept that. Let it go. I always tell my kids, the way I describe it is like, let it flow through your body. Like, don't fight it, accept it, and then choose how you're going to react to it. And that will help build your emotional mastery. And then lastly, the fifth step really is to do daily practices. Arthur Brooks talks about starting ridiculously small. I talked about a bunch of things here today. I don't expect everybody tomorrow to start doing every single one of them. An easy one is the gratitude, just thinking maybe before you go to bed. Start with something small, but do it consistently. Maybe anchor it to an existing habit, like, every time you brush your teeth in the morning and at night, maybe do a gratitude thought process. And then prepare for obstacles. They're going to happen. It always does. Nobody has a perfect life. We're going to all be dealt things that don't make us happy, but it's how we deal with them that makes a difference. And then stay consistent. The studies show that it takes 66 days on average to form a new habit. So it's basically like 2 months, right? 2 months in a week. So do it for 2 months, and I bet you'll see a difference. There's something called the happiness curve. And what I think is interesting about this is I'm not afraid to tell you, I'm 55 years old, and I'm at the bottom of the happiness curve. But the good news is it goes back up. So the studies show that throughout our lives, like when you're first starting out, kind of as a young adult, the future is bright. You've got all these things you're looking forward to, maybe getting married, having kids, having a wedding, whatever it is. And then life happens and it gets kind of mundane. But then we start to master kind of, now I got through all of that and it comes back up. My father is 82 and he is super happy right now. But again, just know that it's not linear. It is definitely bumpy. And if you're like me and you're in your 50s, don't worry. The curve's going up, right? So this is just a highlight of those repeatable behaviors that we already covered. And then don't hesitate, start it now. Think about what you're going to do this week, this month, and this year. Set those goals. If you are someone that likes to write it down, write it down. The studies show it makes a difference. Also, I put together this happiness games that you could do at the dinner table if you have children. I love Thanksgiving because we go around the room or the table every Thanksgiving and we talk about what we're grateful for. We do it at Christmas as well. But here are a bunch of different kind of games you can do with your family, with your children, because, the more we can raise an entire family's happiness, the more it will impact everybody around us. So I think that, these are things, number one, rose, thorn, and bud. My stepdaughter taught me this one. And basically, when we go to dinner, sometimes we say, okay, what was the highlight of today? What was your rose? What was your thorn? What was the challenge or bummer that happened? And then what was your bud? What's your bud? What's something you're excited about that's about to blossom in your life? So those are really great ways too to add connection with your kids, with your family members, your siblings, your friends. You could do this with friends, whoever you want. You could actually play these games with everybody. You could do it at work, team meetings, whatever it is. So with that, I am done with the happiness presentation. I hope that I was able to inspire some of you to take some action. The one thing I hope I leave you with is that it has been proven scientifically and through research that you can raise your happiness level. You have a 25% of your happiness is something that you're in control of. And the other 25% is your circumstances. So that sometimes you're in control of, sometimes you're not, but that gives us a lot of area to grow. So hopefully you all everyone listening has a wonderful holiday over the next few weeks and a fabulous new year. And thank you for attending Prime Capital Financial's happiness webinar.